Um, there we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this fine world of ours. Thank you very much for joining me today. This is Chris Hewer, and I'm joined today by Michael Moon for our Waymaker series. Are you making way in the world? Are you way making? Oh, that doesn't really matter. What matters is if you're living your best life, and what we want to do is help you to do that. And one of the ways we're going to do that is by helping you understand that while your career may feel disrupted, it's not time to settle. It's time to actually seize this historic opportunity that's in front of us, the shifting balance in power back to each of us as human individuals and away from the corporate hierarchies and entities, and into what I believe is a better balance or harmony that's there. And what Michael's been working on is a way to create better alignment to ensure that the objectives that the organization has are accomplished and that the objectives we each have as individuals is also being fulfilled. And as we were talking about a little in the pre-show, that we do it with integrity and that we're looking after all of our well-being. So as we get underway, Michael, why don't you go ahead and get started and do a quick introduction and then talk about this post-COVID landscape and what comes next.
Sure. I thought we might just do a quick we're here for about another 45 minutes. We'll stop at the top of the hour. We'll have a 15-minute thing after for those elective who kind of want to have a conversation or tell me more about that. Our timeline today is, what's the post-COVID landscape look like? As we present that, I've got 2 or 3 graphics to kind of bring that into focus. And then it's open discussion. Either just raise your hand or send a text message or just do a shout out. The second thing that we want to do this is, how do you quantify the value realized by your employer or client partner? And this is one of the largest parts, one of the most challenging parts moving forward. Is it's a parallel to have lunch or be lunch, right? Either you're going to define your value or you're going to have somebody else define it for you. And if you default to somebody else's valuation, you'll end up getting 4 or 5 cents on the dollar, heavily discounted. So what are some strategies, frameworks, tactics around really having a fair and comprehensive way of describing, depicting, and ultimately quantifying the value that you will generate? And then finally, the 11 steps of getting a more equitable share. So, and this is about a career transformation roadmap. Chris, do I need to go any more in terms of background or shall we just jump right in here?
No, you're good. Let's just jump right into it.
Cool. So what we've outlined here are 3 or 4 things all at once. And I want to call attention to the graph at the bottom. I call it the 3 phases of life. And at this 3 phases of life, there are particular lessons, opportunities, challenges that show up. So I don't know if we have anybody here. I think we've got maybe a couple people here that are kind of 35 or younger. And for those in that particular framework, it's kind of like, well, who am I? Where do I belong? And so if you're 30, 35 years old and you don't know what you want to do, guess what? You're doing exactly what you're supposed to do, which is just to kind of muck it up, mess around, sample of various things, and with the idea that as you shift into the next phase, 35 to 65 or so, it's really about how far can I take this? And at that point, you really begin to have a sense of, this is my career, these are my people, this is what I really want to do in the world. Now, of course, there are all sorts of shifts and transitions and evolutions of that. But for the most part, the next 30 years, from 30 to 60 or 35 to 65, is really about developing a career, a talent stack, really understanding the value that you bring to the world and seeing how far you can take it. Then as you kind of shift into your 60s, it's kind of, what's my singular gift that I want to share? Now, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. we'll set aside that for a time for another day. But the key point of this particular graphic is that to the extent that we can live life backwards, to the extent that we can say, well, what is my singular gift? And how does that transform the lives of people that I want to serve? And if you make that your North Star now, it turns out that navigating the two previous life passages becomes really, really simple. Not easy, but simple. So that's one key takeaway point here is the sooner that you and I come to understand what singular gift from my deep down, so it's not just I'm good at it, but from what's really meaningful to me, what's the singular gift that I want to give, and how does that transform the lives of other people? And specifically, how does that transform the lives of people about whom I care and want to work? That is probably one of the key takeaways for our entire conversation today. Because to the extent that you can have that as your North Star, navigating career advance, career shift, or career pivots becomes a fairly easy, a simple process. Sometimes hard, but simple. Good so far? Cool. Any questions on that so far?
Yeah, let me ask you a question on this, Michael. So was there any fundamental change to these kind of three phases coming out of COVID? Have you noticed any differences yet in the people you've been speaking with? Or is it still holding true?
COVID has accelerated the digital transformation of organizations. COVID has accelerated personal criteria called I ain't working on Maggie's farm no more. As a function of having worked at home, I have now decompartmentalized my life. I have some days I'll put in 11 or 12 hours. On some days I'll put in 4 or 5 hours. But over a net, I've got this integrated organic lifestyle. And now you're asking me to come back to work? Hell no. So those two factors are colliding. Digital transformation, where jobs are getting literally destroyed and pooped out. It's kind of like the cloud consumes jobs and poops out work to be done by somewhere, somehow at the lowest unit cost. So we're going to see a continual hollowing out of organizations. And the jobs that remain oftentimes are untethered and oftentimes are not full-time positions. Mm-hmm. So how do we make our way? How do we make our way forward in that context?
And could you give the short definition for untethered, so that people know what you're referencing when you say that?
Well, Chris, why don't you? Because you're writing the book on that.
Is that my new job? Okay. Well, we're untethered. I believe one of the interesting ways to understand it, we're untethered from our desks inside of the cubicle, right? We're untethered from the corporate timeline per se. We're getting more freedom back in our own time. And we're really untethered from the traditional employment in the ability to create new ways to become a solopreneur. And as a result of that, we're also untethered from traditional boundaries and systems and constraints.
Cool. So our webinar series is really focused on executing a career pivot. So that is to say, if you hear about a career advance, basically you're kind of searching for a job replacement. And our basic takeaway on that is good luck, because the replacement, if you can find a replacement job, it's going to be at half or a third of what you were earning in the past. So replacement jobs are really a mirage. A career shift, go back to school, reboot as an executive intern, get a career coach. Again, you're going to come to the conclusion that I really need to create. I need to be proactive in creating my ideal job, a job that does not exist. And I'll say that again. If you're looking for a job or an engagement, it does not exist. And it won't exist until you co-invent it with somebody who wants that work done. So our conversation today is really about for high agency individuals who have accepted that they must co-create, co-invent their ideal situation, and that we are here outlining strategies, tactics, and frameworks for co-inventing in a collaborative context of a dream job, an engagement, perhaps even launching a new venture, a business of one. And then later we'll talk about an engagement LLC. We'll just put a pin in it called Moneyball for corporate executives. So how do you resign a full-time? So if you're a vice president or a senior director, how do I resign my job and then get re-engaged through an engagement LLC, whereby your client partner co-invests in the LLC as a mechanism for capturing all that intellectual property that normally you just piss away and never get compensated for. So we'll do a whole workshop on engagement LLCs. But right now, we're kind of focused on transform your job position, co-invent a new engagement, or launch a new venture, which is basically a lifestyle, a leveraged IP lifestyle, or a solopreneur. Good? Questions on this so far?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a question just in the transform co-invent portion. I'm just curious, and it sounds like you're going to cover this, but one of the things that I'm kind of in that position right now within my own company, there's just so much influx, and there's like the changing processes, and we're being absorbed by other companies, and there's just so many things in flux that there is the opportunity to sort of invent positions. One of the things that I'm challenged with is sort of the pieces of paper that substantiate who you are, like you were talking about going back to school and everything, they don't sort of hold weight, but they do, but they don't, like in terms of pivoting. And what I'm challenged with is trying to prove the 20 plus years of tech experience that I have, which I can see dominates over, like, say, somebody just getting into the tech sphere, how I can kind of substantiate all of that experience without like an actual school certificate. Like I mean, I can see it, I can tell that, I'm quicker, faster, because I've been in the industry for a long time, but it's hard to prove that worth to somebody sometimes when they've just like, okay, who are you and why do we need to do this, and they've never heard of me before, kind of thing.
Cool. Basically all those pieces of papers, you know what the literal definition of a diploma is?
I don't.
Diploma, piece of paper folded twice. That literally is the definition of a diploma. But they are proxies for your ability to add value. So We're going to get into that. You couldn't have set it up any better, because that's exactly where we're going to go next.
Perfect.
Any more questions before we move on? Cool. So first of all, I want to start off with a professional landscape. Now, this is a transformation of something called the 9-box, the HR 9-box. Now, for people that are familiar with the HR 9-box, it's leadership and potential for leadership, which in my opinion is complete horseshit. It's all kind of in the weeds process. This is really about value realized by the organization and value potential to create new value. This is the new scorecard for who gets invited to the table and who gets sent home. And now, increasingly, organizations are going to start to implement a talent strategy, which is how do we identify our top 2 to 3% and put them into the most leveraged, advantageous positions in our organization. Some research that Ram Charan did, one of the great management gurus, identified that in the S&P 500, 40% of all the incremental value created in an organization came from 3% of the talent. I'll say that again. 3% of the talent generated 40% of the incremental value created in an organization. So this is now is the basis of Moneyball. This is the basis. So now the question then is game changers, 10x value players, impact leaders, 5x value. So they do 5x more value creation than the norm. We've got potential elite performers, and I suspect there might be one or two of you here that are potential elite performers, right person, wrong position. It's just a matter of context. It's a matter of, are you in the area? Are you in an innovation zone that is placed to your strengths, not your weaknesses? And so in the gray, these are all the people that are going to find themselves out of a job. Unproven rock stars, underperformers, spectators, good workers, exception. These are the people that are getting outsourced, outsized, downsized, outsourced, eliminated. So the reason I'm putting this here is your customer, whether it's a partner, employer, or whatever, is going to start looking at what's your value add. And it comes back to then, well, am I going to frame it? Am I going to frame my value to be added, or I'm going to let somebody else frame it for me? Understand that if I let somebody else do that for me, they'll denigrate, they'll depreciate 80, 90, 95% of the value that I bring to the table. Or to your point, Wayne, if you use your resume to argue for your position, you're going to end up in a very disadvantageous position. Got it. Cool. So how do CFOs determine business or economic buyers? So to the right, this is what I call the informal value calculus of economic buyers. So when there's a proposed investment, the person who's determining this, CFO, CEO, COO, whoever, is going to say, well, what's the primary effect? And they're going to pigeonhole you in one of 7 different categories. Your intangible, oh, it's a process improvement. It's just a qualitative improvement, tactical, small scale improvements, lower costs, increased revenues, compliant risk. And the point is, the value hierarchy is the higher you go, the higher the relative value. It's kind of like perfect pitch in music. People don't have perfect pricing. They know the price is something relative to something else. So the question then is, how you package your proposal will name and frame what category your buyer positions your proposition. I'll say that again. How you name, frame, and package your value proposition will determine how your buyer, customer, partner will accord, will associate, will peg your value in this hierarchy of value. Generally, I'm saying minimum. The minimum is, how do I increase revenues? So of all the things that I'm going to keep coming back to how my sauce on your steak increases revenues. 2, if I can tie that with compliance, or if I can tie that with taking on an unfunded liability on a balance sheet, then you've got a 1-2 punch. So the job is to have a defensible argument, which is a proposition that's been weaponized. You want to have a defensible argument that frames how you increase the value of the organization, minimally increasing sales. Good so far?
Yep.
Cool. Now we've got frameworks to do. So this is kind of all up in the cut. So we'll bring it down from 50,000 feet now down to down to ground floor. Cool. Any more questions on this? Now, in here, in this deck, in the back of the deck, in the probe further, we have some additional things here around balanced scorecards, innovation, investment zones, capability, maturity, progression model, and another 9-box realized. So as a function of this, Matt, to your point, there's a goodie bag of things by which we can then have additional conversations and more reading.
If I may, Michael, one other point, I just want to make sure that no one else had questions before I jumped in on this. I think it's just important to remember that this is how senior members or senior leaders in an organization look at value. The person you may be talking to may not be the person who understands this language or resonates that. So always be mindful of who you're talking to. And you may need to change it to be more specific to, their favorite radio station, what's in it for me, or WIIFM. So just be mindful of that. This is how we position ourselves and frame ourselves, using these language and these sorts of business benefits that we can deliver to drive these investment returns. But you have to be talking to the right people in order to really make that resonance happen.
And just to build on that, one of the things that Chris and I have seen a couple times now is that when somebody with whom we're working takes this model and starts to describe their value proposition vis-a-vis a position agreement, which we'll explain a little bit, oftentimes the person goes, oh, you need to talk to my boss. Oh, you need to talk to the CEO. Oh, you're bringing a lot more value to the table here. And I thought this job description, this job description that we worked hours and hours on, it's actually an insult. I apologize. Cool.
I'm terrible at this part. This
Yeah.
is the game playing. Like I get that this is how, and I've been in this situation before where I've been on that, let's see, the lower tier on that.
Yeah.
And, the CFO gets, especially if a new CFO comes into a company and decides to check on things and decide. But yeah, I'm terrible at telling my own value, I guess you would say. And sometimes I think that there's stuff that I would assume people already know, but needs to be included as, a value proposition of myself, but I don't include it because I think that it's sort of like, well, everybody knows that I can do that. But things like that. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Very common. And I do that all the time. And in fact, discounting our own value is something we need to learn. But something else I've learned over the years is that, people will focus on what we put in front of them. And so putting the right things framed in the right language and leaving out some of the other stuff is really important. And as those of you who are my friends know, I'm a TMI guy, and that hasn't always served me. And working with Michael over the last couple of months has really brought that true in terms of being able to communicate that value to potential business partners or other people we're working with. So it's a really important area to focus on developing strengths and better skills at.
And Wayne, there's kind of two things I want to speak to. One is, you initially framed this as a game that people play. And I want to kind of reframe that as, this is the game of business.
Yeah.
So this is not a game to be taken lighthearted. This is essentially the brainstem of CEOs and CFOs. This is the cognitive categories by which they make sense of the world and how they allocate resources.
Right.
So now what I'm hearing is, well, this is a game that I don't know how to play well. Okay, great. Or this is a game I need to learn how to play a little better. Great. Now, the other thing is that especially, and I found this among really kind of technically accomplished individuals. Technically accomplished individuals, because they work in such a structured, disciplined environment, whether it's engineering or technology development or programs, they assume that when they're talking to somebody outside their domain, that their person understands all of the investment that went into and the hard thinking that went into developing and mastering the discipline, which of course is not true. So this is why oftentimes engineering-led startups will position their value proposition as a process improvement and wonder why nobody buys. So we've got you covered. Let's go on to the next one. So let me talk about the 11 steps of a career transformation. Now, we're just going to scoot through this. And we'll just pick on 2 or 3 things on the front end. And on subsequent webinars, we'll be getting the rest of this done. First of all, I want to call your attention to the bottom at first. So some of you are in the process of shifting from, your 30, 35 to kind of how far can I take this? In the process of that, there is what I call a great undoing. So in that flux state, when you're in that flux state, it's like everything is crap. I'm confused. I'm annoyed. I talk to people and they don't get it. I've submitted I've gone for this job and I get no. So W2F, what the hell's going on, right? So I'm just saying that there is a natural kind of reshuffling of the deck. I call it an undoing, which is about letting go of what got you here and then getting down with what's going to get me to where I want to go next. And it's that shift that is oftentimes perplexing. You lose your confidence. You kind of like go, well, what help? Cool. So let me walk you through kind of the map really quickly. So first of all, it starts with a commitment. I'm just gonna. And I'm just gonna is that point where you need to go, well, inaction is no longer a choice. Inaction is now putting me in greater jeopardy than making a needed improvement. So that's generally the first part that's required. Is like inaction is no longer an option. I will die or I will head towards death, a certain death or pain, if I persist in the manner that I am. I've got to change. Generally out of that, then you want to start going, okay, in life, where am I? How does my world show up? Now, the problem with the current position is that it's oftentimes freighted, burdened by the past. But it's important that we start off with here's where I am, and generally in a coaching session or a peer group review, we start to say, okay, well, here's where I am. Here's what's going on. Here are my commitments in life, and then we go into a retrospective. Now, the retrospective part is one that is. I find it endlessly fascinating. One of the things I do, one of the things Chris and I do, is we'll take people either in one-on-one or small groups and say, with respect to that last job, what did you hate about that? What did you hate about that? Now, in the course of unpacking that, you'll discover, one, that you have values, and two, one of the things you hated about that was your values were being violated. Three, most people are completely oblivious as to their values in action. So by going through some of the scars and pain of the past, you get to really clarify and own as a function of a conscious, deliberate, and persistent expression of values moving forward. Now, when you are clear about what your values in action are, two things happen. One, it makes complete sense why you failed in this particular position or why you had these interactions. Two, there are environments where you put those values in action and boom, it blows up. It's wonderful. It is like unbelievable. Oh God, I've died and gone to heaven. So by becoming clear about what your values in action are, you become more discerning, instantly reflexive discerning in terms of where I belong. There are certain situations where I do really, really well. And when I'm invited into a situation that doesn't sync up, I go, thank you, but no thank you. I think I might know somebody who would be a good fit for that. Now, another part of that, so that's part of the unpacking of the gifts, which is what are my values in action? What's my skill stack? Now, a skill stack is, I get this from the guy who does Dilbert, Scott Adams, and he describes it really brilliant as almost a Venn diagram of what are three things that I do really well, but when I put them together, I'm the best in the world at. So everyone has things that they do well, that they love doing, that might pay well, but there are a lot of other people that do that one thing. But when we can identify the three or maybe four things and then look at the overlap of these four things, that'll be the gift of your genius, God-given talent. And that'll be the basis for attracting your ideal situation. So it's really, really critical that we start to understand not only my values in action, but what are the 3 or 4 skills that when I put them together in one unified expression, boom, it transforms everything. Now, there will also be ways of working. Some people are introverts and they really, they tolerate working in groups, but they do their best work, earplugs in, doors shut, drapes drawn, just get the fuck out of here. Let me go to work. There are some people that really say, well, I really like whiteboarding with people and kind of mixing it up. And I can literally hear and feel what people are saying deep down, what's in the background out of which they're making meaning. That's what's juice for me. So it's really important that as when you go through the highs and lows of your career, you begin to really understand that there are environments and situations that pull out your best. Cool. Then horizons in terms of what's possible. Again, a little bit like your current position. Most people, when they think about their futures, they think about their futures through the lens of the past. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what got us here. However, we're now in a time when we now have to really think about and envision and stand in possibilities that are unburdened by the past and linked to your better future. And this leads into what we call a future proof. Let me give you an example of a future proof rather than a description of it. I invite each of us here to imagine that we are in a webinar in the year 2024. And in this webinar, we are doing a retrospective of what's happened over this last three years. Now, in this realm of all possibilities, anything and everything is possible simply by your say-so. In this realm, you have complete agency, complete sovereignty. This is the world of pure imagination, okay? Now, in this world, I'd like you to imagine, as you cast your awareness into the future, there's a myriad of futures, just almost an uncountable number of possible futures. How do you choose? Great. Direct your attention to that future that is the most satisfying and the most fulfilling. Now, it's just a feeling. It's just a sense. It's kind of like right before dawn. You can see the corona of the sun over the horizon. So you kind of know east is that way. So just with a sense of they've turned out better than I imagined. I am deeply, deeply satisfied. I am filled with gratitude. So from that perspective, what do you recall happened? So one thing I recall that over the 3 years that just passed, that Waymakers became a global movement, and we had chapters, hundreds of chapters all around the world, where peers were coaching peers on how to waymake in the world of endless possibilities. I recall that the people on this call, each had these incredible stories of transformation to tell, and how they were, each of you were like chomping at the bit to say, oh, guess what I did last week? I went up on the Virgin Galactic and I was weightless. And it turned out that Branson comped me the ticket. I didn't even have to pay, because I'm the person that transforms environments wherever I show up. People now make my way. So that's an example of a future proof. Now, where does that go? So what happens when we start doing a future proof like that? We start training our monkey mind, our safety-seeking, mediocre, settling for monkey mind. We start training our monkey mind that this future is a big place and that I'm safe. In fact, I'm not only safe, but I'm having a lot more fun than I am now. And that it's just normal that I show up. It's just normal that I have these abilities and skills where before I thought I sucked at it. It turned out that was one of the things that I was really genius at. So Wayne, one of the things that you became genius at is making strategic business cases that always got funded. In fact, you became sought out across the world, across industry for, oh, he's the go-to guy for an engineering business case. Oh, he's the guy that took on organizational debt. Not technical debt, but organizational debt as a part of the overall digital transformation of organizations. Cool. Now, notice just in your body what you feel right now. So just a quick couple, 2 or 3 things. Christine, what do you feel?
I had to unmute myself. I'm feeling a sense of satisfaction thinking about those possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a confidence that comes out of that.
Yeah. Cool. Tammy, what do you do?
I've thought about it a lot and I've seen it and I can see it. And the gap between wanting it, seeing it, feeling it, and making it happen, that's where the disconnect is.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
that was just the next step on the roadmap.
Yeah, that's what I'm waiting for.
Abilities, right? In what areas do I focus? In what areas of focus do I have commitments? And projects with next action, scorecards, and so on. And then how do I get things done? How do I manage my commitments? What I have found is that people get into that a little too quickly, and they lose sight of the big picture. They lose sight of the inspirational, oh my God, it's really possible. So the question then is, how do we bring those into harmony? Which should be the next slide. Singular gift, engagement packaging, which is how do I organize an optimal engagement and fair exchange of value with my true fans, partners, customers? How do I presence that? So notice there isn't the word, there is not the content word here. I think content is crap. Content represents a creative product that has been stripped of its humanity, it's been stripped of its juice, and it's just stupid red, green, blue dots on somebody's screen. Content is crap. People do not receive it as a gift. It's not connected in terms of any kind of exchange of value. So content does not produce gratitude. Personal communications, personal, heartfelt, simple communications. And that's essentially what we want to do, is what gifts of information, interaction, or experience Waymakes for others to engage my singular gift. Now for each of you, that's going to be different. And then finally, Fanbasing. I'm not quite satisfied with the name for it, but it's how can I demonstrate my gift? How can this demonstration transform the experience of just one person? So your marketing, quote unquote marketing, transforms into presencing and Fanbasing. Your marketing is really, I'm now doing this event, I'm writing this article, I'm putting together this presentation with the aim of transforming one person's life. Now, if you go back into the secrets of public speaking, acting, it all comes back to, I want to connect with one person in the audience. And around that connection, a whole vortex begins to spin and it blows up into this infectious, oh my God, I was there. Amina, I know that you haven't said anything, but did you want to say anything about kind of what you're feeling here?
Hi everyone, I'm Amina. Nice to meet you. Thank you for doing this. Yeah, I agree with you. I think I was just thinking about the fan basing idea, and the demonstration of transforming just one person's experience could lead to an entire persona and group of people that you can support. And I think it's way less intimidating to just think about it from one person and the contribution you can offer, and go from there. So I like this model. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome. Can you see my whiteboard behind me?
Yes, but it's small in the window, depending on who's.
Can I deprecate the window here?
Yeah, you just stop the presentation and stop share screen and put it back on you.
Okay. So I've got a model for this I'll share with you, but I call it circles of trust. And the circle of trust, perfect. I'll get to that question in the chat. So in a circle of trust, I'm in circle one, and whoever I am physically intimate with is also in it. So my wife is in my circle, is my first circle of trust. Then there's a second circle of trust, and these are people that you go on vacations with. These are people that you have dinner with 2 or 3 times a week, 2 or 3 times a year, 4 times a year. These are people that are close friends, family, close friends. Now, according to some of the psychological studies I've seen, is that you need to have about 15 to 20 people in this to have a deep, meaningful life. However, the average for most Americans is less than 3. So right there, we've identified a social dynamic that is the source of a tremendous amount of happiness that then gets projected out as consumerism, buying shit. In fact, we're going to see this whole year as people making up for the fact that they simply do not have enough intimate friends. And so this buying these, ungodly F-150 trucks and riding them down that's all making up the fact that they have an insufficient number of intimate friends. Okay, so now we've got a third circle of trust. Now the third circle of trust are individuals who know you, who love you. These are people that you've done projects with. These are the people that if you send them an email, they'll respond. You send them a text, they'll text back. These are the people with whom you've worked. Now, realistically, my notes here. Realistically, we've got between 400 and 800 people in this third ring of trust. Now, the older you are, the more it skews. The younger you are, it's going to be. It turns out that these people will generate 80 to 90% of your referrals that land in business. So when we talk about your God-given gift, we talk about your singular gift, it is primarily for an audience of 400, a network of 400 to 800 people. That's it. Now, when you connect here, guess what? They light up the fourth, and here you get thousands. So here is where the opportunity is, and they will link you. That's fan basing. Fan basing is, I have a singular gift that transforms the life of people. I've got 400 to 800 fans. I've got potentially 400 to 800 fans, but 400 to 800 people that know me, that trust me, that know that I'm a good guy, that want the best for me, that will, if I ask for an introduction, they'll make an introduction. And all I'm now doing is making sure that I've got an engagement package, an offer that is shareable, that doesn't embarrass them, that they feel, wow, this is cool. I am proud and honored to pass this on to somebody who needs it. Cool. Alex, did you want to say something? You're good. All right, cool. Matt?
Well, Michael, let's just hit, it's the top of the hour now at 11 o'clock. So if we could just, there was one more slide I think you wanted to go
Yes,
into.
there was. One more slide.
Let's get that last slide done. If you guys can stay a couple more minutes, and then we'll wrap up and we will kick into all Q&A discussion.
Okay. Two slides. One is, this is what I call horizons of focus. So these are categories. And this is something that we use on a quarterly basis to say, okay, so this is the horizons of focus for a entrepreneur, a business of one. So if we think about yourself as a business of one, either an employee or a contractor or an entrepreneur, you have a certain set of commitments as a leader, a manager, marketing and sales, satisfaction insurance, admin, members, people that work for you. So this, if you will, is a way of just a quick little shorthand for saying that there are areas, and I want to simply go through and identify what are my commitments in these areas, and what, if any, things must I accomplish in the next 6 months. And those things that you want to accomplish in the 6 months become projects that go into a project management system. So finally, summarizing. So we did this as kind of navigating uncharts, right? So stay the course. I'm going to stay in my job. If you're going to stay in your job, one of the things we really recommend that you do, and we have a past conference on this, a past webinar on this, is really develop a position agreement. Now, then 15 minutes after, we'll do a little bit on position agreements. If you're going to transform your job, what you want to do is you also want to do a position agreement, but you also want to now look this in terms of re-engineering your job as an autonomous business unit and starting to really package your job as an engagement system, as an engagement entity. And part of that is to go through digital job transformation, which we explain elsewhere. Or finally, play Moneyball. And we're going to do a whole workshop on playing Moneyball. But right now, as we go through this 11-point program, this 11-point thing, it's ultimately about documenting your job in terms of a position agreement. And let me see. That's kind of a position agreement. So this is the outline of a position agreement. And again, you'll have examples of this in the shared drive. But first of all, like an agreement, there's an agreement bind between the principals and kind of guiding principles for this particular role. Future proofs, objectives and key results, organizational OKRs and personal OKRs, areas of focus, work to be done, workspaces, and then policies, protocols, and procedures. One of the things about developing a position agreement for your ideal job is that literally it will transform how you experience your job. It will transform your relationship with your ideal customer. We also use position agreements to give to customers. So if I'm selling a technical system, oftentimes my technical system will create its own job. So rather than having them just kind of stumble around for months and months trying to figure out how to use your system, you're saying, hey, here is a career opportunity for leading the adoption and full deployment of this system. Okay, so.
Mike, let me stay on that slide for a minute on the position agreements. So what I just wanted to point out is that, out of this 11-step process, and it might end up at 12 or 13 or down to 4. We'll see how it gets packaged together. That's part of our conversation with you, is to actually learn and help improve this. But my point is that as you look across the spectrum, you see in the beginning, it's looking back to do that retrospective, to understand, and identify the values that you've created in the past, to find those moments when your values have been in action. And then it's looking forward and trying to determine what it is that your gift really is that you want to contribute to the world and who to. But then in making it real and formalizing it and turning it into something, moving more into Matt's question, but there's a different question in the habitual components, Matt, what you're asking about, is that this is where it comes to life, whether it is with a client as a solopreneur or a consultant, whether it's with a employer, whether it's with your boss or with the whole organization, and showing how you interact with all of them. This is where it kind of all comes together.
Matt, let me also speak to your question around habits. So it comes down to, so these are the kind of, this is right out of Getting Things Done, making it all work. And so part of this is what do we actually do on a day-to-day basis? And so on a day-to-day basis, it's like, what are the, against my master plan, what's the one accomplishment from my master plan? It's like all the other stuff. What's the one thing I want to accomplish today? And so this is a system that will allow you to identify the one thing to do today, the doing of which progresses you towards your master plan. Now, the other part of that is a daily plan and also a daily scorecard. Again, we'll talk more about the tactics of daily plans and journal of gratitudes and scorecards. But that's another part of really taking all this kind of abstract stuff and go, how do I achieve and celebrate small progressions, small wins every day? And how do I parlay those small wins into larger and larger wins, and ultimately where now I'm working through a day based on flow, not on compression. I'm doing things now because I'm called to do them, and I have huge blocks of time that are just open and free to do that one thing. Now, getting there is a process. And getting there is about learning what not to put your attention on. And so that's what all these horizons of focus are about. It's about, okay, I've got a system, I've got all this now, I've got this stuff now down, what can I ignore? And ultimately it's what David Allen calls mind like water. How can I simply, for the next 90 minutes, give myself wholly, without restriction and without yapping dogs of the feral dogs of my imagination, my monkey mind. What can I do? Simply just be here fully and direct the full force of my creativity and passion without distraction. Now, when you have that focused on the gift that transforms the lives of people, you then have a feedback system, a closed loop system that is a force of nature. And that's where we want to get. We want to get to where I am doing what I came here to do.
And if I may be more prescriptive in this from my personal experience, again, some of you know I've struggled with ADD over the years, so I've had this quite a bit. And this is where I've learned, to be here now. And actually, I use that mantra when I notice myself going off and paying attention to things that I'm not supposed to do. But it is where meditation for me has become more helpful. I still struggle with that. I still struggle with making it a daily practice, but that's something that I'm working on now as well, because I know that it allows me to be present with the people that I'm with and to be more focused. But it's also about having those systems. It's also about, thinking of the calendar really as your commitment keeper, as they used to call it, and committing that block of time. Just as I did this morning, I'm blocked from 9 to 12 with Michael for Waymakers, and all the other stuff is not important. Even though it is important, it's not important now. We have to be focused. And then of course we run into the longer term problem, which is life interrupting, which is the fact that we have established bad habits or poor habits that we need to break, and needing to start building these new patterns. And that's where having somebody to work with, somebody to whom you can be accountable, somebody to whom you can be vulnerable to actually talk about this with is so important. And that is one of the greatest things that AI will never be able to do. and that is to coach and lift another human being with empathy and with love and with compassion, and to really understand and see the full gift that is inside of you to help you manifest it. And it's just something that takes discipline and a lot of hard work. But at the end of the day, if we have a process, and the process that Michael's been building for this, I really like a lot. It may not be this one for you, it may be something else, but as you'll see, synthesizing all the different wonderful sources that Michael has become familiar with and read deeply, and some of which you may have never even heard of before, it's a really powerful set of tools. So very excited to be able to be working with this and hopefully helping you all understand more of this as well as we proceed. So Michael, why don't we wrap this up and start moving it into the Q&A. Any last things you want to share about the 11 steps right now and about the program for digital career transformation? Ugh.
No, I'm actually pretty, I'm pretty complete here. We have 11 steps. It just starts with a commitment, and you do it yourself, do it with us, do it, do it someplace else. These are generally the milestones for transforming your career into a vehicle for expressing your fifth and final why.
And if I may just, and then here in closing, and then let's open it up for a broad discussion. I just want to put this again into broader perspective out of the steps themselves. It starts with a moment in life where you realize that, the way it is no longer acceptable to you, and that you're willing to finally fully commit to what could be, to actually embrace what your full potential is. And through that, we move into this sort of retrospective and looking at where things are, because you have to know where you're at in order to get to wherever it is that you want to be going, because it is where you're starting. And you have to look at that with integrity. You have to look at yourself with compassion and love, because there's things, I have this problem I talk about a little bit too much sometimes, about some of the vulnerabilities and the pains of looking at that and opportunities missed and what have you. But there's a lot of value inside of that. So focusing on that value, and that's really hard. And I think Wayne was mentioning that before, about it's oftentimes very challenging to like speak to that and to actually identify that value. And that's where we find a lot of the people we've worked with so far have been really struggling, is to actually put what they've done in value terms to help sell their future potential. But anyways, once we do that, we can move into envisioning that future. We can actually then put it into a real plan to define it in something along of a position agreement and your engagement packaging. And then we move into how do we live that life? So it really is a sort of look at where things were and where they are, choose where you want it to go, because today we have more agency than ever to actually make that a reality, and then step into that life and actually live it. And, this is a really, again, it's not easy, but it is simple, as Michael says. And I think that's the best way to do it. And it's not easy because it deals with a lot of other emotional issues with us, as well as our financial issues, as well as our relational ones. And in that sense, it's a little more complex, but we address them one at a time, and we bring our whole self to it. And when we're able to address all these things and not have to compartmentalize some of the emotions that we're feeling when we come to doing that retrospective, some of the emotions we're feeling when we're trying to future-proof, and then all of a sudden see and can step into that possibility, as Christine mentioned before, when you can do that, you can actually feel the joy and you can pre-imagine that positive outcome. And that's really the powerful component of it. And from following this, you can move to live it. And then to the last point, as Matt was mentioning earlier, making it a habit and making it what we do, how we show up consistently, that's the real challenge, and that's what's on you. But with that commitment and with the purpose that's driving you to it, if we can continue to create rituals and ways to come back and touch it every day, that's a really big step towards that long-term direction, forming the new habits and living in this new life that you're imagining for yourself. So I'm really excited by this potential and looking forward to your questions and how we might be able to help you. So please, if anyone has anything you'd like to ask or share, raise your hand, and Michael, go ahead and stop your screen share and let's see everyone's face. I'm going to move to a gallery view if you guys haven't done that already, so I can see everyone at the same time. And thank you all for showing up today for our Career Disrupted webinar.
Well, let me just do a quick round robin. So Alex, you haven't said anything. What's one thing that you got out of today?
Michael, thank you. And Chris, this has been excellent. Way more value than I expected. So thank you, Chris, for prodding me to join
Good.
today. I do have one question, Michael, is in this fan basing. Let's say you've had a corporate career and you've done your MBA and very corporate career, executive positions, and that's what everybody knows you as.
Sure.
And yet you start to figure out that your unique gift to the world is in something completely different. Let's say astrology or drumming or like something completely off the beaten path, nothing to do with corporate.
Uh-huh.
How do you fan base and I think even more importantly, how do you get past that resistance, the psychological resistance of like, oh my God, everybody's going to start judging me now. I'm going to be completely outcast and alienated because I'm taking this new path.
That's a great question. And there's kind of three of them all kind of mushed in there. So one is as you begin to go deep down into what's really important for me, what are my real values in action? Something interesting happens. One is you stop caring less and less about what people think. Great. The second thing is that people that are truly in your third ring of trust, they're going to go, Alex, I always knew this was part of you. It's kind of like, oh, I'm gay, or whatever. So I'm out. Well, yeah, I knew that. I've known that for a decade, right? So it's kind of like, well, and thank you for having the courage finally to come out with what it is that I know that you're really about. So your true fans will absolutely celebrate your genius, your quirk, your eccentricity. And then third, as you begin to really connect with just a handful of people, one or two people a week, maybe just one or two people that are really like, oh, this is good, right? And as you start getting the feedback loop, it's just like you go from doing waltz to doing freestyle. It's just like all of a sudden it's just a new dance. And the more you do it, the more fun it is. The more fun it is, the more you do it. And all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I used to be a corporate suit, but that was then. I'm now seeing a completely new world. But it just starts with really your deep down. What deep down am I really about? Now, there's one little side note on that. Oftentimes, your first forays into what I call your deep down, you will discover a child who's pretty pissed off that you've been ignoring him. So there's just a little bit of, okay, yeah, I really fucked up. But now I'm in it to win it here with you. And so there's some repair work that you need to do with your inner child or your intuitive self or whatever, and really saying, okay, great. Well, I'm now conscious, deliberate, and persistent about making sure that we're safe in the world and expressed, right? So, cool. Really great question. Who else? Amina, do you want to say something?
Sure. Thanks for asking. Michael, I loved what you had to say to Alex. Alex, I would say also after the emotional repair work, you coming out in whatever your talent is it going to open up opportunities for everybody else that wants to, that's afraid. And that's your fan base, So it's like, it works so well.
I mean, I'm going to just build on that because you just said something so brilliant. Oftentimes, the very thing to share is the thing that about which you feel fucked up.
Right.
And it's one of these damn paradoxes. The very thing I have to share is the thing that I've struggled my life with.
Yeah, it's this idea of how can I turn the thing that I'm most insecure about into my gift? Because it becomes that way.
Well, in fact, that's what people connect with.
That's right.
People connect with, oh, Alex didn't figure all this out. I can still
Went
see him
through it.
grappling with it a little bit. But he's like 4 or 5 steps down the road further than I am. So if I can get 3 or 4 steps down, I'm good. I don't need to go all. I just the next 4 or 5 steps. So Alex, lead the way.
Yes, it's more
This
human.
is, this is really helpful. Thank you so much, both Amina and Michael. It's fantastic. Yeah, it's kind of like the obstacle is the way.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and yes, I am connected with the inner child, and it is,
Hey, go,
it's there. I
Alex.
said,
You got it.
Amina, did you want to say anything else? I know I cut you off in the middle. But
Oh, it's cool. I think we just said it.
cool.
Excellent. Vivian, you had your hand raised.
Who's next? Tammy, David?
Vivian had her hand raised.
Okay, Vivian, sure.
Hi. So I'm in the 30 to 35 set, and the reason why I'm mentioning that is because I've tried a couple of things, and I tried to share my gift with the world and failed miserably. And then you have, I guess society, your family, your friends, your parents, your significant other tell you, okay, you tried the entrepreneur thing, it didn't work, you failed at it miserably, you need to get a job, you need to get back to the 9 to 5, you need to get back to the societal norms that that's kind of ingrained in us in college and whatever, you need to work for the man, corporate America, whatever it is, right? And I guess the thing is that when you want to try again after failing, say, twice to follow your passion, there's a sense of doubt. And I find, like, with my fan base, they're not as fanning as they should. So what do you do in this situation when there's that fear, you want to go out again, but there's that fear of failure that you've already experienced? You've obviously have the lessons learned from it, but everyone else around you is a little more skeptical about giving you that support because they've seen you go through the trials and tribulations of failure.
Michael, may I?
Yeah. So let me address it in 2 ways. Many, many years ago, I decided that I wanted to have a career as a public speaker. And I was a shit public speaker. I was paralyzed with fear. And my thoughts were jumbled. And I couldn't put together 2 sentences to make sense. So it's not like, but there I was. So that's an example of a God-given gift that I had. I felt morally responsible for bringing to the world, for which I was completely incompetent and inept. So that was the conflict. Like, I totally suck at this, and I must do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a part of me just it's not going to let go. So one of the things I did is I did 2 things that turned out to be pivotal in hindsight. One is I enrolled in a little workshop for stand-up comedy led by a guy named Lee Glickstein. And one of the things I learned in the workshop was love the bomb. So when you say things, and it's like you learn to love the bomb, you love the mess, and oftentimes in your loving the mess turns out to be the brilliant thing to do. So that's one thing. So part of that, Vivian, is really loving the mess that you made, the lessons that you learned, the stings that, and it's really transforming it with abiding love. That's one. The second thing that I did, I remember, I'm actually embarrassed to share this, but I was married married to my second wife then. And a lot of her girlfriends, really attractive, successful, professional women, we're all kind of man without, So I said, well, great. I got a great wife. So I said, well, why don't we have a little get together in the living room around attracting the perfect mate. So within 6 months, there were 40 people in this little townhouse living room. The embarrassing part, of course, is that my strategy for how to attract, how to find a perfect mate was deeply flawed, because within a year I was divorced. And one of the most painful experiences in my life. But in the course of that, out of that particular undoing, was should I ever get married again, I'll get married for the right reasons and for the right motives. And the bottom line on that is, I'm going to choose a person whose love of me will transform me. It's not just that who I find interesting and laughs at my jokes, but that I trust her enough that I am transformed by her love of me.
Very powerful.
19 years ago, we got married, and we're still like, I'm still transforming. And the very thing that we're doing today is a product of that transformation. So Vivian, the point that I guess I want to make here is that you're in a period of time when you're supposed to be sampling. You're not supposed to figure it out. You're just supposed to. And so a great book to read is called Range by David Epstein, Range. But it really lays out the case that you're not supposed to figure it out. You're just supposed to go out there and just mix it up and to find what life pulls from your deep down. Because right now you've been kind of heady. Oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I'm saying, yep, and that's great. But let's work on the other system, which is, what am I called to do? Well, I'm not called to do anything. Okay, well then get out there and find out what does call you. Just mix it up. Cool.
But, sorry, I was just gonna say yes, but then there's also, there's mixing it up, and then there's also the responsibility of, you're looking at retirement, you're looking at, you need to have a nest egg, you need to, have.
Yeah, those are all the lies that our society tells us to make us that make us a debt bond slave to mortgages and car payments. Excuse my somewhat blunt. It's horseshit. The world is going to be so utterly transformed in the next 5 years that the notion of a retirement is like. So your job is to say, well, what am I here to do? And then, retirement will come, all the money, but the point is, the challenge that you have today is you have too many damn choices, too many good choices, and not a good way of selecting them. Mm-hmm. Right?
If I may speak directly to the practical component, Vivian, I started my first company at 24 out of Miami. That's 27 years ago. I've since failed about 20, 25 maybe, including plus another 10 that didn't even get off the ground. Most recently failing with what I was trying to accomplish with remotely last year, which is now still going. And the concept of failure really is just, unfortunately, a construct of society in the same sort of mirage that Michael was just speaking to, because every one of those led me to learn something that led me to what's next, that led me to a big job at Deloitte, that led me to a new opportunity to create a new business, that led me to, new client projects and new everything else. And it is about finding the people around you who can support you through that. And happy to talk more directly to that at some future date. So, please post that in the community, drop us an email, and happy to talk to you more about some of that specifically, because it is a real challenge when you don't feel supported by your friend network and by your loved ones. and where you're not feeling seen. And that's something else that I've dealt with quite a bit over the years, because some of the stuff that I've talked about is so emergent and obtuse that there isn't language for it. And, it feels funny. And it requires a lot of inner strength and personal development and persistence. And, it's going to require you to become the best you really can be, and to be okay with who you are as that real you emerges.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Anyone else want
Closing questions.
next one here?
All right, Michael, well, we have a couple of really good points here from Matthew that, Matt, do you want to just speak to it really quickly in closing and make the closing points that you wanted to summarize here?
Yes, please.
So earlier on, I guess one of my comments was, don't be scared by admonitions to, people telling you to be a worker bee in a hive that's toxic to you, or that is not your calling. Safety is a false master. It's important to take care of business and to do the normal minimum things that you need to do to pay the rent and have a roof over your head and everything else. On the other side of that, honestly, in this changing economy, in this period of history, there is no safe 9 to 5. Sorry, it's a workers. Right now, people are finding it hard to hire great people, so the workers have a little bit of the upper hand right now. But that will shift over time, and we go through economic cycles. But if you find yourself, thinking I have to have this soul-crushing job and I have to be miserable because I can pile up, an extra $100,000 in my IRA, you're going to be miserable and probably die an early death. And you'll live longer and you'll have all that stuff, but you'll have an awful life. So it's not Pollyanna to say I can do something that gives me pleasure and that I love and that I can survive. It's not Pollyanna. It sounds like that when you're in crisis or when you're completely worried and scared. But have faith. You can find it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Matt. Really appreciate it. Michael, closing words, and we've got to get wrapped here.
Why don't you wrap it up?
All right. Well, again, Michael, really thank you so much for sharing and seeing the evolution of the work over the past couple of weeks as it's arrived today. Really lovely. And I hope that all of you have gotten something wonderful out of this. As I mentioned earlier, and as Michael mentioned, this is work that's emergent right now. We're starting to do it with a few people. So we are doing some independent coaching. Really, there's 3 models, as we like to say. There's take the information and do with it what you will and do it yourself. Join us here in community and share some of these questions. In addition to these free webinars, we're starting to do some more small mastermind-like group sort of sessions for a small monthly fee. And then we're also doing, individual coaching or position agreement development or engagement LLC development. So all those things are the reasons why we're sharing this wisdom and insights with you. And that's where we hope to make money as we do this, in providing services to lift more people to give their gift to the world. But right now, I just feel I've got chills because I'm seeing what I've been trying to work on for my whole life coming to reality through this work with Michael. Being able to be here, be my true self, share my difficulties, share my hopes and dreams, and be able to help elicit some of that from you. And more importantly, to show you that there is reason to have faith in yourself, and that if you can find the inspiration to believe, and if you can put in the work, because it is work. Matt, I think you mentioned something about the 11 steps felt like a project plan to you. It is a project, but it's also something that creates an artifact and enables a new you to emerge. And so what is the value of that? What is the value of that time? I think it's invaluable, and it's worth every second we can pay to it. And if we don't do it, it's going to happen on its own, and it's not going to be your design. So let's take our agency, let's put our intent into it, and let's make the future happen that brings about the best you and allows your gift to create the best world that we could possibly have. So thank you all for joining us. Please stay in touch. And if you have any other feedback for us on what we could do to improve it, please do share, because we are trying to constantly improve this. The slides will change week to week, as you'll see, based on your feedback. So we appreciate you. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much, Michael Moon. Appreciate your insights again. This has been the Waymakers webinar series, and we're looking forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Same time, same Zoom, Facebook, Eventbrite channel, wherever you found us. Cheers, everyone. Have a great day.